So today I'm going to talk about from diagnostic to discovery. So in genetics, even diagnostics is also very important because if we can't diagnose anything, you can't say how you are going to treat a patient. Okay, forget about gene therapies and all that. First, even as a preliminary thing, we are still stuck with diagnosis. So to diagnose something, we should know the technology. So that's also very important in genetics. So I'm going to talk about from diagnostic to discovery. Genomic advances in a DBT, Department of Biotechnology, initiated pediatric rare disease program. So in my overview of my talk, I'll just introduce the type of variants and then tell about limitations. So I feel like, okay, this is a wrong slide. We can put. So in my overview of my talk, I am going to tell about variants, what are the types, give a small introduction about genetics, and then tell you upon some illustrated cases and also the technology, what technology should be used to identify a specific type of variant. So coming to rare genetic disorders. So what is rare? There is no definition for rare because Americans have a different definition, UK people have a different definition. So we can consider whichever is not common is called as a rare disorder. So almost like there are 70,000 plus diseases which are classified as rare. And then 350 million people worldwide have a rare disease. 50% of the babies who are born will die before 1 year of age. So we don't have anything to test. And in India, one in Indian, it is speculated that they are affected with these rare diseases. So if you see, that means considering our population, about 7 crore people in India suffer from rare diseases. But this is also not a point. The point why we are interested is almost greater than 80% of these rare diseases have a defective gene. So that is the reason why we have to test what is that defective gene there. And then 2/3 of the rare diseases patients do not receive the best thing. Why they can't receive? Because they are not even identified that they are having some rare disease. That's the reason why they themselves do not know where to go, how to go ahead, and most of the clinicians also are not aware of such rare diseases. So because of this, the Department of Biotechnology has initiated a huge program that's called as Mission Program on Pediatric Rare Genetic Disorders. So here we are the nodal centers and 16 centers are there. So all over India, you can see pan-India, because yesterday they were talking about the population dispersal, the VC sir, he was telling, like how we have to analyze the population, like in example, population in Kerala might be different, population in the other northern part of India might be different. So for that, we have almost, if you see, it's covered pan-India. So all the people, so out of this 16 centers, there are centers with clinical centers. That means they send only the samples. They see the patient, they see that there are lot of phenotype in that, and because the phenotype has to be matched, then they will send the samples. And sequencing center, we have the sequencing center. Yesterday in Dr. Boni's talk, he showed you a huge big machines that is called as NovaSeq X Plus. So I tell you, in India we have everything. Okay, so we are the government institute. We have been government institute. We are having one NovaSeq X Plus, which is the highest giving output of sequencing. And even in India, there are 3 or 4 installations which are there in private sectors also. So here the functional group. So what is more important is everything with me. For example, the Kerala government, they do exome sequencing free. Tamil Nadu government also does exome sequencing free. See the advancement of so much. I don't think except Kerala, except Tamil Nadu and Goa, none of the healthcare departments does the exome sequencing free at level of screening part or a confirming part for a child. So here we have functional. So you have lot of variants which are uncertain. We do not know what type of variants those are. You can't predict that variant. whether that variant is responsible for causing a disease or whether that variant is not causing a disease. So you have to identify. So we put it something called as VOUS, variant of uncertain significance. Either it is not a benign variant, benign is something which doesn't cause a disease, and pathogenic is something which causes a disease, right? So for that, to identify such exome negative cases and then VOS variants, whatever are there, we do functional tests. So there are different functional tests what we do, so that for which we have some 6 basic research groups which will be translated, because whatever we are doing, it is an application and translation part. So the basic research group will be working, for example, madam is working for 30-35 years, she worked on Y chromosome. And then what is that? What once upon a time they were thinking that it is a heterogeneous gen. Now she has attributed that, showing that there is a association with an autosomes which are there. Autosomes at the trans-splicing, there is a regulatory mechanism which is involved. So that is her work which is continued for 35 years and we are just translating it. So that is what is essential. So there are functional groups also, and all this, if you identify that a novel variant is there and then that is causing a disease, and how do we go about? So we need to find out some vaccines or some therapies. So that is also, there is one group which is working on gene therapies. Now what is the goal of this project? To reduce the burden of rare diseases in India by the joint effort of clinicians, scientists and citizens. How do we achieve this? By creating awareness, like I am telling to you, this is a program which is running, and then providing diagnostics. So I can offer you at the end of my talk, I'll tell you if you have any cases, you can send it to us and do free of cost. And then discovering novel genes. Suppose if we find some novel variants in a gene, known gene, then we can report. If we find some novel genes, then we have to do the functional validation and we will say that this gene is responsible for causing this particular phenotypes. Because if you see in genetics, almost 19,500 genes. Human genes are regulatory, but only we have around 7,000 genes which are associated with disease. Still, we do not know the function of the 5,000 plus odd genes or the remaining genes. What is the function of them? Whether they are doing it as a solo function or they are doing it in combination with other genes, that still we have to identify. And then counseling. So this will help in counseling a patient and avoiding a family, not, we are helping a family not getting a similar affected individual. And also trying to establish novel therapies depending upon the frequency of the population. Like why we have heard the previous talk. Why are they doing that studies? Because in a particular population, what is the frequency of that particular disease which is there, which is prevalent, and if that disease is prevalent, then we are going to do some therapies. The government is going to invest on that and then we will get a gene therapy out of this where we can really treat the patient. So this is the primary goal of this project. So to achieve this, we have 7 objectives. So the first objective is we have to recruit patients. So the patient recruitment will be a very good phenotype, pediatric patients will be taken, and after which we do the exome or genome sequencing and then we do counseling. So genetic counseling will be pre-test counseling and post-test counseling. Because pre-test, when a patient is thinking that they are getting a exome sequencing or a genome sequencing, they will think that this is the ultimate test which is there, they get all answers from it. But it is not correct. So we have to give a pre-test that we will do this test. If we can find out something, we will let you know. If we cannot find out, we will sit upon your case, we will re-investigate again and then we will get back to you. That sort of thing we have to tell before only. Post-test, depending upon what are the results you are getting, then you can go ahead and do. And the third thing is whatever VOS variants we are getting and we are suspecting that it is fitting into the phenotype and we find out a variant, then we have to correlate the genotype with the phenotype, for which we do the functional studies. So these functional studies will be done in older organisms like say at the cellular level and by doing zebrafish or Drosophila and even mouse model also. The fourth objective is developing affordable diagnostic screening tests. So whatever is affordable, we have to translate that to a medical hospital or something where there are genetic studies going on. So that we are developing, and also I will talk about this emerging technology called as optical genome mapping. Then development of databases. Now what are we doing? There are so much of variants which will be coming. So yesterday in one of the talk, I think Sir has told, like there will be so much of data which we will generate. Where are you going to put that data? You should have servers. But whatever I generate, all of you are sending the cases and the data will be with me. What is that? It is not like. So we have a Indian, now the government of India, we have to store our data in IBDC. So Indian Biological Data Center in Delhi. All the data whatever we are providing has to be submitted there. So now that data, depending upon that data, we will come to know the variations, and the government will release funds for the frequency of the variants or the frequency of diseases which are present in that population, and then they will also ask the eminent scientists to go ahead and do the gene therapy in that particular diseases. And then this database also will help to connect a clinicians. It's an interface between a clinician and a scientist. See, for us, we don't have a crosstalk between a scientist and a clinician. So this will bridge the gap. And also genetic correction for rare disease using lentiviral gene therapy vectors. One of our collaborator in CMC Vellore, he is doing on Fanconi anemia. And awareness program, coming and telling to people, like there is some program, a huge program which is going on in India like this, where you can approach or whom you can recommend. That is also one of the important things what we are going to do in this project. So before that, I give you a small introduction. So we all know that genetic disorders can be classified into chromosomes. This I wanted to put it because I wanted to take it as a story for the students who are sitting over here. So the chromosomal disorders, single gene disorders, and multifactorial disorders. So multifactorial disorders I am not going to talk about today. I am going to talk about, just introduce about chromosomal disorders and also highlight majorly on single gene disorders. So if you see the background, the human body is made up of some trillions of cells, and these cells contains nucleus. And nucleus have thread-like structures called as chromosomes, and these chromosomes carry genes or DNA. So the study of this, all of us know it is a cytology, and the study of a chromosome is called cytogenetics, and the study of the DNA or gene is called as molecular testing, or now next generation sequencing is a technique where we can identify. And the study is called as the byproduct of the gene, that is a protein. The study is called as biochemical genetics. Anything which is studied in the fetus, that is called as prenatal diagnosis. So basically genetics at every level plays a very important role here. So we test here at the DNA level. That is why we have to really see at the base pair level what is the transition, what is the change which is happened. Okay. So chromosomal disorder, as someone before has told, like it is about the study of the chromosomes, and normally in humans we have 46 number of chromosomes with 22 autosomes and a pair of sex chromosome, XX in female and XY in male. So what we can identify from chromosomal analysis? So we can grossly identify numerical and structural anomalies and numerical trisomy, increase in one chromosome like Down syndrome or additional chromosome, and monosomy is loss of a chromosome, and triploidy. Ploidy is change in a whole haploid set of chromosome, and then tetraploidy, double the chromosome ploidy. And structural anomalies, intrachromosomal anomalies, anything which happens within the chromosome is called as intrachromosomal, and these can be inversion changes, ring chromosome, deletion, duplication, isochromosome. And interchromosomal or reciprocal translocation. A translocation which is happening, there is translocation, in chiasm formation will happen. That is why we are all different from each other in packaging stage. But this is a normal thing which happens between a homologous chromosome. But anything which is happening between a non-homologous chromosome, that those are called as translocation, and that is a reciprocal translocation. There is one more type of translocation called as Robertsonian translocation. Like this translocation happens between the acrocentric chromosomes. Okay, when two acrocentric chromosomes come together, it is a Robertsonian translocation. So basically, when we do cytogenetics, we can identify all these chromosomes. So that is why we should not do additional tests when you are identifying a Turner syndrome. So never go for fish. If you are doing all the tests, the patient and one thing which I would like to say, for a diagnosis for a rare disease for a patient, it will take 7 years for a patient to come to a conclusion for a diagnosis. So he will be going from one doctor to other doctor and all that, doing all type of tests, whatever the doctor suggests. So we should be apt in identifying the test. So for example, this is a additional, you can see there is a additional chromosome 21 here, and very specifically you can see the features, like if there are presence of a single crease and a very wide gap between the sandal toe and upslanting eyes, all these are present. It is a very specific features of a Down syndrome. When you see a face of a Down syndrome and when you see chromosomes, you need not do any fish or anything. That is the stop of that particular test. The case, we know that this is the chromosomes, additional chromosome 21 is responsible for this disorder. And structural, so there is a change here. You can see that there is a translocation which is happening between chromosome 2 and chromosome 5. So this is a structural change, and these are all non-recurrent. So you can see that they will be having different various function. And but to study such things, it's a trove of information, because from such studies you can identify novel genes, and you can also identify the gene disease association when you study such rearrangements. Now coming to single gene disorders. So as I told you, what is a variant? So variant, how do we know that? See, suppose I want to measure this one, I need a scale to measure. Otherwise, if I say I will measure with my hand, maybe madam's hand is smaller than mine, so she will have 4 things, I measure 3. So there is a standard reference. So after the advent of the human genome, now we have a reference. Okay, this reference will be every time updating, and now the latest reference is T2 genome. That means telomere to telomere, you have the sequence, whole sequence of the T2 genome. So reference is something that there is a sequence, and what is a variant? Earlier we were calling mutation, but for now, please don't call mutation. Mutation is replaced by a term called as variant, according to American College of Medical Genetic Guidelines. So what is this variant? Variant can be polymorphic or benign variant, the girl who presented in the morning, SNPs. So single nucleotide polymorphism. So those are all benign variants. Okay. If it is a disease one, we call it as a pathogenic variant. If it is a polymorphism, we call it as a polymorphic variant. So don't use the term mutation. Mutation is only meant earlier that whichever is causing the disease. So any change, any single base pair change, as the girl told, single base pair change, suppose C to A transition is happening here. So this can be a polymorphic variant, but this can be also a disease causing variant if it is leading to a disorder. Now in human genetic disorder, there are only 4 types of variants what we identify. So one is called as copy number variants, change in a copy. Dynamic mutation, triplet repeat disorders, all the repeat disorders are called this, and structural variant. Structural variants are change in deletion, duplications, all these are structural variant, and single nucleotide variants. Now when the variants are so, even the technology to detect these variants also will be different. So first we should understand the type of variant, and then we should understand what is the type, the technique what we are going to take it. So if you see these variant detection, how are these variant detected? Copy number variants, something called as multiplex ligation probe dependent amplification, which you can read out. I will just tell you in detail. And real-time PCR, and FISH also for known copy number variants. For unknown copy number variants throughout the genome, we can do something called as microarray technology. And for structural variants, karyotyping is still the gold standard for doing. And for at the traditional level, they were doing by physical mapping using positional cloning. And then with the advent of next generation sequencing, long read sequencing is a very good technology to find out these structural variants. Emerging technology like optical genome mapping also is used, where you can identify these structural variants. And the dynamic mutations or the triplet prime repeat disorders, those can be identified by using a triple prime PCR. And single nucleotide variants, if you know what is that you are looking for, you can simply do a Sanger. If you do not know, then you can do next generation sequencing, especially exome or genome sequencing. Now, how do we identify the copy number? So, copy numbers are change in a copy. So, a change in from 1 to 2 bases also is a copy number, and a change in greater than 1 kb is also a copy number, and a change greater than 1 kb is also a copy number. So, depending upon what you are seeing, you can check. Suppose if there is a 2 base pair change, you can do a simple Sanger. If there is some 150 base pairs, you can do MLPA. If there is a change of 1 kb, then you have to do a chromosomal microarray. And this ranges from, as I told you, it ranges in size, and then it can be either disease causing, even not only a single base, even a stretch of big sequences also can be benign, and they can also be pathogenic because they are conserved coming in our population, just like that. So how do you detect this copy number? As I told you, fluorescence in situ hybridization, and then multiplex ligation dependent probe amplification, and also real-time PCR can be used. Okay. So real-time PCR, because there is an exon and there is a deletion of one particular exon. So what you can do a real-time PCR, and you can see that normal if the levels are here, and in the patient there will be half of the levels or 0 levels if it is, depending upon whether it is a heterozygous or a homozygous. Then genome-wide testing for SNP. So whole genome, if you want to test, I told you that chromosomal microarray is the best one. And the ultimate thing is whole genome sequencing. You can identify everything, but still we are in a establishing some pipelines for the identification of genome, because now we are sitting upon one case and we are doing research. We take almost like a couple of months to identify that one. We can't expect a clinician to sit there and do all these things. So we have to try making the pipelines into a very easy approachable thing, so that people can analyze this data. So this is what, if you see, this is a case of a DiGeorge syndrome, where there is a microscopic deletion will be present. Submicroscopic means which cannot be seen under a microscope. And then if you do a FISH in such cases, then you can see whether there is a deletion of that particular region or not. But this is in known CNVs only you can identify. Similarly, like MLPA also. So this is a readout of an MLPA, where MLPA is a technique where it compares the normal with the patient DNA. So this is a genotyping, like both the alleles which we have that will be analyzed. And what happens here because this is a chromosome 21 deletion which is present here, and you can see that half of the peak will be present when compared to the control. So that is how you identify this. If it is 0, that means a homozygous deletion. If it is half, then it is a heterozygous deletion. Likewise, homozygous duplication and heterozygous duplication also can be identified. So dynamic mutation like Fragile X. So this is a case. It's an X-linked disorder where there will be CGG repeats. So there will be a lot of repeats in us. So if you see, if you just think like whole the principle of DNA fingerprinting is based upon these common repeats which are present. The SNPs play a very important role here. So in case if the repeats in the 5' UTR region of this particular FMR gene is around 6 to 50, that means it is normal. We have to identify, if it is greater than 200, then it leads to fragile X. And here it is important to identify the size also, because pre-mutations, the borderline of that also causes something else which we can identify and tell them. Okay, for such things we can do a simple short PCR, means normal PCR if you do in a normal patient, because there are no repeats, you will get a normal band. But in case there is a very big expansion, there won't be any band which will be seen. But that will not tell you exactly, it will not confirm it. It might tell you that there could be an expansion. But then you do a TP-PCR, they will have 3 timers. You can go back. If anyone have doubts, you can get back to me. I'm here all day. And then you can see only one peak over here in X chromosome in normal individual. But because there is an expansion, you can see so many peaks here which is going around. So this confirms that there is a expansion which is present in this fragile X case. Now coming to single gene disorders. So single gene disorders, again Mendelian inheritance, it follows Mendelian inheritance. It can be autosomal dominant, for example achondroplasia, Huntington, etc. and autosomal recessive like thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, and X-linked like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, hemophilia, etc. and Y-linked are male infertility genes, because there are no specific genes which are being going to the offspring in the man, except SRY and DAS, which are the male infertility, and one is with the maleness, whether he is a male or female. So these are the genes. But then this is excessive hair on ear pinna. You can see in some families, father has that hair, but son also has that ear pinna and all that. That is a very well predicted Y-linked trait. Maybe you, in now generation, you can't see because they trim up the things. Otherwise, you can just see in generation. So in case of when do you do a standard PCR? Okay, you should know standard prerequisites of the PCR, like you should know the sequence, you should know what is the mutation, what you are looking for. Then only you have to see that. For example, in case of a sickle cell anemia, that's what. See, one base pair change, when it is leading to a disease, it is called as a pathogenic variant. So here, instead of the T will be formed. That means the whole glutamic acid is getting converted to valine, making a change of round RBC to sickle RBC, leading to this blood disorders. So after that, you do a Sanger sequencing. So Sanger sequencing is a second step of your PCR. So you have a one PCR product, whatever you are doing. So that PCR product, original PCR product will be taken as a template, and then you use a single primer. Okay. Then you use fluorescent labeled DMT piece, and also you add something called as dideoxynucleotide, which are chain terminating, which will go and block the 3' end of your sugar phosphate block, and there it will be terminated. All we do the capillary gel electrophoresis, and then the size is separated. There will be some lasers which will be there because of the 4 specific DNTP colors. It will be there, and you can see that them reflected as a chromatogram. Now you read these chromatogram. You see here A is there in sickle cell. It is a normal. Here A is green in color, and you can see T, which is red. The other sequence are all same. So one base pair is causing a disease worldwide. Oh, single gene, single variant throughout globally is causing a disease. This is a sickle cell anemia, where you can simply identify. So the next generation sequencing. So in humans, next generation sequencing, there are 3 ways of identifying. So the whole genome sequencing. How many base pairs we have? 3 billion base pairs we have, 3.2 billion base pairs in human. All these base pairs should be seen, each one base pair, where is that mistake which is happening. And then whole exome. What are exome? Exome covers like 1 to 1.5% of the genome. So exonic regions are the coding region, protein coding region. So most of our diseases, almost like 80-85% of the known diseases now cover within this exonic region. That is why exome sequencing is known to be a common test which is offered by a clinician. And targeted resequencing. Suppose that is why the frequency of the disease matters. In Kerala, suppose there is a disease which is very common, then we can target only that particular diseases, because it will help us in only identifying that disease. It will save our energy, save our time, and save save our data storage also. Instead of going for huge data, you can have small data which is very easy to analyze, work and also store the data. So the general workflow, people, all the student thinks that, they are hi-fi next generation sequencing, but believe me, next generation sequencing is very, very simple. In fact, your molecular biology testing, making your own primers, designing your own primers and doing a PCR is much more hard than doing the next generation sequencing. So it basically have library preparation, sequencing and data analysis. So library preparation sequencing will be done by a company. If you are not owning anything, then you need to know only about the data analysis. So this data analysis, if the students are really good and that, you will get really good jobs everywhere. Because now, as sir has told, that genomics is the big field, because it is not one particular field, it is genetics or any field, any science with a technology input in that. So the advancement of technology is really making it stand away, and so much of sequencing or throughput sequencing is happening. There is so much demand for the students now. So people who are interested can really go through about this next generation sequencing, and you can get an immediate very good jobs. Okay. And what are library preparation? Just a glimpse of it. So the DNA will be taken. So randomly it will be fragmented. We do not know what is A, what is Z or something, right? Then after this is fragmented by using restriction enzymes. So restriction enzyme will have cohesive as well as blunt ends. Again there will be end repaid. All of them will be made blunt. Then there will be some tailing, we call as A tailing will be there. So A will come and attach to all the blunted ends. Then there will be something T-tailed with adapters. So adapters are something, it is just a stretch of sequence where we know, and this will be going and aligning. So likewise we take all these adapters, and then if we are multiplexing, that means we are adding n number of samples, you need to multiplex them and pull out together and then put it into a sequencing machine. So this is NovaSeq Express, which is a high throughput sequencing machine what we have. That means you can do 60 genomes at a time. So that is a huge data output what we have. And this is GridION, a long read sequencer, and NN9, a sequencer which is of this size, which can fit onto my hand palm. So that also is available. So the first objective, because I have given this introduction because of this first objective, how do we select cases? So any child with a good phenotype, good phenotype means not good in terms of us. A good phenotype means having some features of intellectual disability, seizures or developmental delay, all these things. They are recruited, and we rule out all these chromosomal disorders. We identify. If it is affected, we remove them from the study. If they are negative, then we do FISH and we do MLPA and we take it further. Same thing with the single gene disorder, and then if affected, we exclude from the study, and if it is not affected, then we take them to the study. So basically, doing all the conventional methods, we get those things, and then if anything is positive, we remove from the study, and if anything is negative, we take it further for exome sequencing. So the second objective, as I told you, exome sequencing is a protein coding region. So it almost covers like 1,80,000 exons. So that means 1,800 exomes we have done till now in this project. And you can see, so this is a gene, okay. If you see the structure of the gene, these are introns, and the blue color regions, these are exons. So there is a way only where we pull out these exonic regions, and only these sequences will be, these regions will be sequenced. Okay, this is called as exome sequencing. Now what we can identify by exome sequencing? So if you see that scenario, known gene and known variant. So in this boy, who is a 4-month-old boy, we born to consanguineous family, and then there is a global developmental delay with microcephaly, epileptic spasms, and there is a EEG which is showing a parietal epileptic discharges. Okay, you don't be scared with all these terms. These are the things which a patient will come with all the phenotype, which we can match it up. And MRI showed hypomyelination and atrophy in basic ganglion. So in this case, when an exome was done, we have seen that there is a variant, stop gain variant, which is found in TRAPPC1 gene. Okay, so this gene, when we have seen that what is this gene, you have to, there are so many public databases which are available. You can go and you can check what is that gene function or what is it doing. Then it is matching with the same phenotype of this patient. So this is a very straight scenario where known gene and known variant you can report to the patient that this is what is happening. The second scenario is known gene, but it is a novel variant. So known gene means like we know that this gene is causing a disease, but it is novel. So what do we do? So this is a case where short stature and microcephaly in a 5-year-old boy, and with all skin rashes you can see, and early cutaneous photosensitivity. So these are the symptoms what he is having, global developmental delay. So when we have done exome sequencing in this, we have found that there is a ERCC6 one, there is a deletion and insertion, 2 base pair or 3 base pair deletion with an insertion also. So this is a novel variant in Cockayne syndrome, which is autosomal recessive. Again, you have to see that what is the inheritance. Then, because it is autosomal recessive in this case, what we can do the Sanger confirmation. We can go to the parents and we can see whether both the parents are heterozygous to this particular case, and then we can identify. So the third scenario is known gene and a novel variant, but that novel variant we do not know what is the status. The earlier one, it is pathogenic, that means it is leading to a disease, but now it is a variant of uncertain significance. So then what here we have found that there is a 1 base pair insertion which is found, and in this case we have done the Sanger sequencing and we have seen that it is a de novo case and further functional work is understood. So such type of cases are very important because we can identify the gene which will be involved in causing this phenotype of the patient. Now again, whole genome sequencing, the whole genome will be done. So how do? You have 2 ways of doing whole genome sequencing, by doing a short read sequencing and a long read sequencing. Short read sequencing are only 150 base pairs will be taken, and long read will be almost like 18 to 15 KB regions will be taken. So there are advantages and disadvantages of both. Short read sequencing, it is very difficult to analyze and interpret the structural variants, but whereas long read sequencing, the structural variants can be detected at a low coverage also, and then repeat regions can be identified, and even methylation, there are some genes which are methylated and which cause disease. Such methylated genes also can be identified by doing a long read sequencing. So there are commercially 2 technologies which are available, that is Oxford Nanopore technology and PacBio technology. So Oxford Nanopore, it is very quick, and then PacBio, even it is more depth also. So you can identify with affirmative thing, you can say that the variant which is there is a true variant when compared to Oxford Nanopore technology. So in short read, if you see the number of the challenges, there are a lot of challenges still because we are establishing these pipelines. There will be so many, approximately some 5 lakh variants will be there. From that 5 lakh variants, it is like finding a needle from a stalk. Because so many variants you have to filter out. How do you filter out? First, whether those variants are present in the population databases, you have to filter out, and then you have to see what are the phenotypic and genotypic match. Then coming to a conclusion is a very big Herculean task. So here if you see that we got 0 to 6 variant in that particular patient, in this patient especially, sometimes we'll be lucky enough because if the break point happens in the exonic region, then it will be easy for even the whole short genome also to capture. Here you can see that this is a 4-year-old boy who is born with to a non-consanguineous parents with joint contractures and scoliosis. Then you can see a triangular face and joint laxity, and severe ambulatory restriction was there. And in this case, we have seen that there is a 28 kb deletion, which is a homozygous deletion, which is identified. Because this is such a big one and it is falling into these 3 genes, we could identify. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult to identify by doing a whole genome sequencing. So this is osteogenesis imperfecta type 11, and which is autosomal recessive condition. So with this, I'll tell you what is the advantage of long read genome sequencing, especially ONT. So Oxford Nanopore sequencing, what it does, all these sequencing machine, they basically do the same thing. The output, the readout is only finding out the sequence, but they differ in their chemistry and the flow cells and the library preparation. Each one of them has a different library. So long read Oxford Nanopore, they have biological pores which will be there, which are present in the flow cell, in the sequencer. And these biological, whenever you are adding your library there, it will go and touch to that nanopore, the biological pore, and that nanopore is a helicase, it's a protein, so it will unwind the DNA, and the other pore whichever is there, it is a pore protein. So a single stranded DNA will enter and current will be passing there, and then the disturbance in the current will read out these bases. So this is a novel technology, and here this is a 12-year-old girl with short stature. If you see that in cytogenetics, we have seen that there is an additional chromosomal 12 part. So here we want to identify what is the origin of that, and when we have done FISH, we have seen that there is a translocation which is present on chromosome 1. This is a whole chromosome 12. So we have normal 2 chromosome 12. You see both of them are there, but additionally you can see some red region which is present on chromosome 1. So this 12p part, whatever is there, we could identify that this is a translocation which is happening between chromosome 1 and 12. So we use different bioinformatic pipeline, and what we have identified is, we have found that there are 4 different unique reads which are present, and if you see, these are the reads. Can you read the bases? So this is a window called Integrative Genomic Viewer. So there is a trove of information in your hand for the students, especially. When we were students, we are not having all this. You have your mobile, just open your Google and everything will be there. Okay, these are all publicly available softwares. So this is Integrative Genomic Viewer, where you can see that the 4 unique reads, you can see that it disrupted on a gene called EYA3 on chromosome 1p and FCAB4b on chromosome 12p. So now what we have done, we have just designed some primers, and then we have seen at the what is there, where is exactly the breakpoint. If you notice here, we have seen that on chromosome 1 and chromosome 2, there is a microhomology which is present. Because of this microhomology, it has mistaken it as its homolog chromosome, and it has gone and it is going to a non-homologous chromosome for this translocation to happen. So what we could identify the molecular mechanism which is underlying this particular translocation, that is called as microhomology mediated brain induced repair, MMBAR. So with this particular translocation, we could also identify the molecular mechanism which is underlying this one. So now both the breakpoints are disrupting 2 genes on 2 different chromosomes. So for which we have done an expression studies, we have simply done a real-time PCR for this EYA3 and then FCAB, and then we have seen to our surprise it is overexpressed. Both of them are overexpressed. Overexpressed means gene expression, both of them should be normal. If something is happening extra, it is called as overexpression. Something is not happening, it is coming down, then it is called as underexpressed. So both of them are overexpressed. Then we could see that this overexpression is because this translocation has led to the breakpoint. This breakpoint led to a fusion gene, a bigger gene which is formed, because of which a bigger gene means a bigger protein. So that's how this fusion gene has happened, which we could correlate. And this EYA3 and FCAB gene also had a role during development and connective tissue formation, and this is associated with the phenotype of short stature in this patient also. So just because of a simple translocation, we could identify what is the molecular mechanism which is involved, and we also could show the expression, and we could correlate the genotype with the phenotype in this case. So the third objective, what I told you, is identifying the functional characterization in mouse models. So now we get some vivo years. So this is a case of AIMP2 gene, what we have identified way back, long back into 2016, homozygous AMP2 gene, which is associated with progressive neurodevelopmental disorder, so in a child. But we could not, there are no cases around the world, so we don't know whether this particular gene is causing this disease or not. So how to go about in that case? So we have to show that in some model organism that this particular gene is causing the same phenotype. So what we have done, Dr. Rohit Joshi from our group, he is a Drosophila scientist, he has taken up this particular gene and he has knocked down one exon from this gene. So this, he has knocked down this AMP2 gene. So if you see that, and also there is a huge complex which is formed, amino acid complex which is there, and this is a scaffolding protein. That means this protein is involved in the folding of certain things. So if there is a defect in this protein, that folding will not happen. So here we have shown that this is mostly expressed in glial cells, glia and neurostem cell. That means we can't do any experiment in brain, right? We can't have human brain as a sample. We can have blood samples, but we can't have those samples. So that's the reason why we go for an alternative model organisms. So in this case, if you see here, what we have done, this is an AIMP2 knockout gene. Can you just play this? Yeah. Yeah, you can see that. So this is a Drosophila knockout. You can see that when we give a puff of air, there is the wings, you can see the wings, right, fluttering here. But you can, second one. So this is a normal one, wild species. See, it is fluttering, but we can't see anything. It is so fast. And then there is another experiment, what we have seen, the climbing experiments. Yeah. So if you see here, these three are normal Drosophila flies, and this is a knockout. So in the knockout, you can't see the flies going up at all. So here only. So this shows that this particular gene is responsible for this type of a phenotype, right? So that is how you can, this doing experiments in model organisms will help out. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, next slide. Okay, so this is one case where we have got a novel gene totally, Serpin A11. So we do not know what to do, so we have created a mouse model, knockout of a Serpin mouse model in here, and we have shown that this particular phenotype is responsible in the mouse model. Whatever phenotype was present in the patient was all in the fetus, because it was not coming to term at all. We could really show. So this is a novel gene and a novel variant which we totally identified, recently published. This is a cover page where very well they are expressed. This Serpin A11 is expressed on the lung tissue of this particular phenotype, correlating the phenotype and the. So identification of a novel gene. So this is like addition. So if you see, like every 1 month you get almost one gene which will be novel. So the fourth objective is development of affordable diagnostic screening techniques, especially targeted panels. We have seen that in South India, especially neuromuscular panel disorders are very prevalent. That's why we have made a panel including all the genes which are related to neuromuscular disorders, and then lysosomal storage disorders, congenital hypothyroidism, and mitochondrial. All these panels we have made. And optical genome mapping, this wherever we have complex rearrangement, those can be identified, and also dynamic mutations like TPPC are exact size, that also can be identified. And FSHD is a disorder where truncation of the repeats will be there, trinucleotide repeats, that also can be identified by this test. So this is optical genome mapping, it is called. So you can see here in this 30-year-old lady with short stature, there is a translocation involving chromosome 2 and 10, which was identified, confirmed by FISH, and this is how we can see. You can see exact translocation from 2 and 10. So what we could not identify in chromosomal karyotyping, you can find that there are some insertions which are identified additionally on chromosome 7 and 20 as well. So I told you about the fifth objective is the database, and then the whole website. This is called as Indvar. So this Indvar, what we are trying to do is we are trying to put all the variants what we are identifying, and we are giving access for the clinicians also. So they also, or other scientists also, if they are interested in that particular gene to work anywhere from India, they can select that and they can ask us for the samples. So gene therapy, as I told you, like Dr. Shaji from CMC Vellore, he is working with Fanconi's anemia, and what he is trying to use is this lentiviral vectors. He is trying to use this, and then knocked out that particular thing, and then he has seen that there is all these are laboratory thing where there is a transfection, and then afterwards the disease where now the whole gene, this particular part is under the disease validation stage. So almost Fanconi anemia is the gene therapy is out. So from CMC only, even hemophilia also, they have the first gene therapy from India is being released by the Prime Minister early this year. So these are all the awareness programs what we conducted, all the 16 center conduct throughout India. And to conclude, we should recruit a case with a strong phenotype, and any test positive we can exclude. Negative cases and we can include for exome or genome sequencing. So any one of you or your clinicians are having a good phenotype, the case can be enrolled in our program. You can just write to us, and we can call you, and we can recruit the patient free of cost. So with this, I would like to end and acknowledge CDFD core grant and our mission program, and Dr. Ashwin Dalal, who is head of our division for response and support, and all our students and patients and families and clinical collaborators. So this is a book which I have written, published by Cambridge. If any one of you are interested, can get back to me. With this, I would like to stop and take some.
When you make the diagnosis, it's a burden, because if it's going to be very severe, which cannot be corrected, it's a burden to the parents.
So, sir, there are
how
two
do you
things.
do that counseling and make them understand? That's what.
Yeah. So, if it is like, we have any indication that there is a variant which we identify, and that is having some pathogenicity, or it is benign. Benign means no need to worry. If it is a pathogenic or likely pathogenic, then we identify something, then we can advise a prenatal. That is one thing. The second part is, as you are telling, like all the neonatals, there is something called as newborn screening program, which is running in a big way in India. So there are several aspirational districts which we have. We ourselves, this program is called as UMMEED, Unique Methods in Identification of Rare Disorders. So where we are doing the 5 easy treatable diseases. So like congenital hypothyroid and G6PD biotinidase, which will lead to mental retardation after few weeks of their birth. So within 1 week, if we can capture them and we are able to give them simple tablet of thyroxine or biotin or folic acid, that will really help them in leading their normal lives. So that one we are doing. Prenatal we are doing really.
Now, your recruitment, is it that you do by yourself, or maybe that is referred by some medical colleges?
16 centers. There are clinical centers from AIIMS, PV Nagar, all pan India, and we have put one center for ourselves. The 16th center is ours. Like for all the other people, anyone who want to send, that's what it is, open to everyone. They can send to us.
Except you, all the others are medical centers.
Almost like AIIMS.
RGCB, of course, is one.
RGCB is not a medical center.
That's what I'm saying.
So that's a lab. So they will be sending what in case of the clinical centers, they send us the samples, and we do the sequencing per se is done at CDFD, like exome sequencing, genome sequencing. And if they can, like RGCD, we used to send the raw data to them to analyze the variants, because even tertiary analysis also is very difficult. So we send them. But whereas in the clinical centers, they will send the samples and we'll also do the clinical tertiary analysis and we can send them. And if anything warrants further functional analysis, we will be going and doing the
After
functional.
you diagnose for a genetic disorder, you suggest for a gene therapy. How much of gene therapy is successful in India?
I do not know, but there is a program. It's called as NPRD, National Policy of Rare Disorders, which government has come up with, which is taken by ORDI. So many of the people, parent groups only, they have come together and they have approached the government, and government has taken that, and they are giving some money for one child, 50 lakhs per child. So we have some centers, out of which CDFD is also one of the center of excellence, where we can give the enzyme replacement. For example, in lysosomal storage disorders, we can give enzyme replacement therapy or a substrate replacement, or also small, because this is some chaperones, whichever small molecules are there, that can be done. And also gene intervention or genetic therapy is not there. Gene therapy, who will, like SMA, they will come again, 16 crore is SMA. And what you have to give, like for example, DMD, no point, there are no specific regulatory guidelines from government. For example, Gaucher's is there, Gaucher's disease. Even we had a meeting just before one day coming here. So one of our clinical coordinator, she has come from Amruta Institute of Medical Sciences from Cochin. So Dr. Sheila Nambudri, she was telling, because she works with lot of cases, here Gaucher's is Pompe's is very common. That is a lysosomal storage disorders. But whereas one person who has come from Ahmedabad, he was telling Gaucher's is very common over there. So these things can be treated by a small molecule therapy. But what, every fortnight they have to be given. Now, 50 lakhs per that child will be finished. Now, how to go ahead after they finish that 50 lakhs for a child with Gaucher's, that is not known. We do not know. And why should, even there are some patients from DMD also, Duchenne muscular dystrophy also, who are getting recruited. And they are also having some intervention therapies or something like that. So for them it is waste, because anyway after 2 decades they are going to die. So there are no proper regulations, but we are getting money. That 50 lakhs is there. Whom to give, how to give, we don't know. It will be like they have categorized. One category is like, for example, a bone marrow change. So that is going to be very good, because the child is going to survive. That is the first category. Second category is providing these sort of interventions and small molecule therapy or enzyme ERTs also they are giving, sir. And third one is like a gene therapy, which is not still coming to.
How about the cystic fibrosis?
Cystic fibrosis is not at all very common in our Indian population. That is only Huntington is but it is a late onset disorder. So we don't have.
My last question. There may be other question. Microcephaly is normally caused by Zika virus infection to the pregnant.
One of the condition.
Okay.
One of the condition.
What is the other condition?
Many microcephaly can be seen in most of the syndromes. Most of the syndromes you see, developmental delay, intellectual disability, microcephaly, all these are very common. Seizures, autism, these are all the common features which you feel. So there will be, if microcephaly is there, in my experience I usually have seen that there will be some sort of genome imbalance.
How do you detect the cause of microcephaly?
There is no, because it is it's a syndromic, it's a feature, right? It is a trait rather than, it is not a single gene which is causing a microcephaly. But the Zika virus, it is because of that, this microcephaly is seen. It is also leading to microcephaly, but what are the other factors in a syndromic features, we do not know. Thank you.
Ma'am, I wanted to know more about the optical genome mapping. How is it different from the previously established techniques such as FISH? I'm pretty sure both are probe dependent.
Correct.
So, like, how is it different? Like the principle behind the technique.
The longer molecules, the DNA will be taken, the longer DNA will be taken, it will be passed through a chip where first the DNA will be compressed because we need to get a bigger fragment, right? It will be compressed, and when it is condensed, then the single molecule of DNA will be entered through this chip and it will be imaged. And this is something like is similar to fish only. It is based upon the hybridization because there will be motifs. There will be 6 base pair motifs which will be present throughout the genome because we are rich in alu repeats, right? So these motifs will be there, and then when it passes, it will be imaged. Now, if you see that the other DNA will be blue in color and the motifs will be green in color, it will be a picture. The images will then be converted to a fragments. So then this can be seen, and it is something like 10,000 times greater than karyotyping, but it is not at the base pair levels. It is only at one point, like how you do the SNP identification in chromosomal microarray. Likewise, the motif identification will be there in optical genome map.
So, this will be done on a single chromosome or
All through, because it is a small chip which is present, and you will add your DNA to that chip. That chip will be read like a microarray, and then the results will come out at us, and then you can see that pie graph, whatever is there, with all chromosome 1 to X and Y. Any translocations or any disturbances which are happening can happen within the chromosomes. It can be very well highlighted.
Ma'am, myself Gayatri, PhD scholar from Central University of Kerala, Kasaragod. Ma'am, is inward for rare genetic disease associated variants?
What?
Inward software.
Invar software. The pathogenic prediction specific software is also there. We are trying to do that for INVAD. As sir has asked, what is about cystic fibrosis? Cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive disorder, but it is not prevalent in our country. US, it is very prevalent in Western population, Caucasian population. So because they have registries and all that, everything today also we are following their registries only. 1 in 700 Down syndrome, 1 in 600 Down syndrome. We don't have anything for our own. So if we do it at a large scale and all of us compile the data only, then only we'll come to know about the prevalence of the data. But for us, thalassemia is very common. They don't have that thalassemia, and SMA is very common for us. 1 in 50 are carriers. So, do you think that we should work with this population, with these diseases, or we should work with cystic fibrosis? This, right?